Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm Gary Harris. Our program is presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock, distributors of fine soft drinks like Diet Dr. Pepper, which we are enjoying this evening. Well, Rodney, the countdown to signing day is on. And for Alabama, there's only a handful of recruits that the Tide is seriously interested in gaining verbal commitments from. One of those is Malcolm Mitchell, and he will announce on Thursday. The Valdosta High School defensive back / receiver was a star in the Under Armour All-American game, and he is a guy that Alabama is right there in the hunt for, along with the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yep, really started in the All-American game as a wide receiver. Gary blossomed this season as a senior as a wide receiver. He's been projected as a defensive back, but 77 catches this year, 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns. There you see him scoring in that All-American game. And there's probably going to be a defensive back, in my opinion, in college, though he says Alabama tells him he can play on either side of the ball, depending on what he wants. But, I think right now as we head into that announcement, Gary, Alabama has an edge with him. Now, again, who knows what can happen, but I think Alabama does hold the edge. And I know that last summer he came very close to committing to Alabama. So, again, it would not be a surprise if he picks Alabama. You
mentioned his versatility, and certainly Nick Saban has had made it a practice of signing guys that could play on either side of the ball. As you said, it's always been thought that he would play defensively for the Tide if he signs with Alabama, but because of the strong showing at wide receiver and that playmaking ability that he flashed, is there a possibility, you think, that he could get a look at both sides of the ball or wind up on offense?
He certainly could, and I think when Alabama has signed versatile athletes, they've given them that opportunity to play on either side of the ball. I think they're going to give, or would certainly look at him offensively if that's what he chose to do. But again, I'm just projecting him. I think he'd probably end up on defense.
Also on Thursday, his teammate, Jay Rome, rated by some as the top tight end prospect in the country, will announce as well. Now, let's be clear on this. They are going to do two separate commitment ceremonies. Rome is going to be televised. Mitchell says, hey, I've got no interest in that. I'm just going to do it the way I had planned it. And while Alabama is a finalist for Rome, Rodney, I think it would be a huge upset if he announced for the Tide.
Yeah, it really would be. And again, Clemson, his dad played at Clemson, was a star athlete there, not only as a football player, but also played basketball. And, Jay is a tremendous athlete in his own right, obviously. And I think he's going to end up at Georgia, Gary, but that's just been the strong speculation.
All right, both those announcements coming on Thursday from Mitchell and from Rome. We're going to have to wait much longer for Jadeveon Clowney to make his announcement. The nation's #1 prospect, in fact, could wait now, I'm hearing, until after signing day. But there is no doubt about this. Alabama made a big move this past weekend while Clowney was on his visit.
Well, I can assure you that Bobby Carroll, his head coach at South Point High School, is probably pushing for Jadeveon to get this over. He does not want to make this last any longer than he has to due to all the emphasis and the attention that's been on that school and Jadeveon. But, Gary, again, I think Alabama did make a good move or a big move in terms of what was accomplished this past weekend on his visit. But I also think that, Chris Rump, the hire from Clemson, has a close relationship not only with Jadeveon, but he has a good relationship at that school, South Point High School, with Bobby Carroll, the head football coach there. And I think, Alabama's done some things, obviously, in the recruiting process throughout that have been impressive to both Coach Carroll and Jadeveon. So I think Alabama's in as good a position as they can be in. With that said, let's be honest, it's going to be very difficult to get him away from South Carolina when all is said and done.
Yeah, while Clowney would be the cherry on top of any signing class, Isaiah Crowell, I guess, could be the whipped cream. I mean, this is a top-notch prospect as well. And let's face it, Alabama's kind of becoming running back you under Nick Saban. This young man right here out of Carver High School in Columbus has narrowed it down to Alabama and Georgia, and Auburn still pitching him as well. What's the latest on Crowell, who also visited this past week?
Well, I think Isaiah Crowell, in terms of his visit, had a great visit. I know we talked to his mom briefly on Sunday night. I know she and his dad had a great visit as well, and they were extremely impressed. And I think, probably they may, as parents, favor Alabama, but I think they're going to allow Isaiah to make his decision. He's a longtime Georgia fan. We've talked about that for weeks and weeks and weeks. I still say Georgia has the inside track. I know it's amazing that Auburn websites are predicting that he might end up at Auburn. I'm not sure how that actually has transpired, but again, I think that Georgia should be the leader right now.
Okay. And a prospect that Alabama has reportedly led forward throughout the process is Cyrus Conjo out of DeMatha in Maryland, DeMatha High School in Hyattsville. His brother Ari, already a redshirt freshman offensive tackle for the Tide. While Alabama has thought to be the leader for a long time, Cyrus really hasn't tipped his hand that much.
Yeah, and I think he's wanted to go through the process on his own, Gary, and not necessarily be connected to Ari in terms of following in his footsteps. But I really think when all's said and done that Cyrus will end up here at Alabama. And you mentioned he's one of the top 3-4 offensive tackle prospects in the country.
Well, Alabama feels good about Conjo, and I think they also feel good if Conjo comes or doesn't come about Aaron Morris, because the Tide reportedly has backed off of Xavier Ward. Morris is a guy who has just picked up more steam as the recruiting process has gone along.
Well, he's one of the more underrated prospects, not only in the South, but probably the country. He is a great prospect. Again, Alabama has done a great job. They've made a strong impression, obviously. Aaron Morris has been committed to Ole Miss for quite some time, and the fact that he opened it up and took a visit to Alabama, is a good sign. But at the same time, when it comes down to it, I still think, with Bo Davis's departure, who had developed a tremendous relationship with Aaron Morris, I think that's going to make it more difficult for Alabama. I know Alabama was over there last week. The new offensive line coach, Jeff Stoutland, along with Jim McElwain, both visited the school. And again, I think Alabama's definitely in the mix, but I still favor Ole Miss in this one just a little bit.
Brandon Shell, thought to be a South Carolina lock, showed up for an official visit this past weekend. Now, some of the South Carolina boards are saying he was sent down here to keep Jadeveon Clowney in check. What's the latest on Shell? Alabama with a realistic opportunity here at all?
Yeah, and what Gary means by that, by keeping him in check, is to make sure that try maybe to continue the influence to South Carolina, given that Brandon Shell's been committed to South Carolina for a while. But, his mother, Brandon Shell's mother, told me that, Brandon was at an All-Star game recently, came back and said, hey, I want to take one last look at Alabama before I sign on signing day. And she said it was a tremendous visit from her aspect of it. But, Brandon doesn't talk much. He's extremely quiet. I just think he wants to be close to home. That's been the way it's been throughout. Talked to Coach Chuck Reedy at Goose Creek High School back in the spring. He told me I'll be shocked if he leaves the state, because he's just that kind of kid, wants to be close to home. So I really don't see that changing.
One prospect that didn't make it to Tuscaloosa over the weekend, Nick Brazel, the outstanding two-way player out of South Panola High School in Batesville, Mississippi. And Snoop can really get it done on both sides of the ball. You mentioned Morris and Ole Miss. I think Houston Nutt's feeling a little pressure, and he's recruiting like it. Ole Miss seems to have a desperate coaching staff, and they are cleaning up right now in the state of Mississippi, surprisingly, with what Mississippi State's done. And Brazel seems to be looking toward Mississippi, even though he's committed to Mississippi State.
Yeah, they've targeted about 5 guys over there, Gary, and they're doing everything they can, I should say, to get those guys. And Nick Brazel is one of them, obviously, one of the best players not only in the state of Mississippi and South, but the country. And I think Alabama, again, Bo Davis had Alabama in great position with Nick Brazel, and I think that Bobby Williams is probably going to take over the recruitment of Nick Brazel. But at this point, I still think Ole Miss is probably going to be the team to be, even though he had been committed to Mississippi State a little earlier.
All right, great recruiting update right there, Rodney. And still to come on Titv, Nick Saban gets a shot in at the media, and a longtime coach calls it quit. But up next, 2011 offers a promising outlook for the Crimson Tide defense, especially after Mark Barron's announcement that he's coming back. How Barron's return equals Alabama's big game. Plus your phone calls and emails at TITV. We're going to take those phone calls at 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us at TITV@WVUATV.com. Stay tuned, because you're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the one, the only Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. Welcome back to Tider Insider TV. He's Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris, and you know who you are. The Alabama defense got a big boost this Saturday. Strong safety and team captain Mark Barron announced he's returning for his senior season. Barron was Bama's leading tackler this past season with 75 stops. He also had 3 picks. He was an All-American in 2009. He says he can wait another year to fulfill his lifelong dream.
It's always been my dream to play in the NFL and to give back to my family. But after weighing the pros and the cons, it's my decision to come back for my senior year and play for the Alabama Crimson Tide, Roll Tide.
Every year he's made a significant improvement, and he's going to do the same thing next year. And that's going to really, I think, propel him into being probably the top player at his position next year, and in a much better circumstance for him to sort of take advantage of that.
And Rodney, Alabama's cause was helped by the fact that he tore that pectoral muscle against Auburn, and let's face it, needed to rehab with the labor situation in the NFL being uncertain. It was his best move to come back to Alabama, but it's a big gain, and you look at this defense, already a very good defense in 2010. Now only one full-time starter, Marcel Darius, is leaving to go to the NFL. Chavis Williams started some, but basically this defense is going to return intact, and man, they could be strong. Yeah, they really could, especially we saw the emergence of Courtney Upshaw at the outside linebacker spot, that jack linebacker. They're late when he was finally healthy. His ability to rush the passer, Dante Hightower coming back, C.J. Mosley with a year under his belt, what a tremendous amount of potential he has. You look at the secondary, now last year this time we were talking about Barron being the only one that would come back, and now they're loaded with Drake Kirkpatrick, D. Milliner. John Fulton's going to be a guy to watch in the spring at corner. Also, you've got Robbie Green coming back off suspension. So this is going to be a defense, Gary, that should be much, much improved, and they were pretty solid. And a couple of big junior college defensive linemen, Jesse Williams and Quentin Dial, coming in. Yeah, and Jesse, again, junior college, that transition, but the key is the fact that Jesse Williams and the guys coming in at midterm have an opportunity to develop in the spring. It's much easier when you come in the spring, have that opportunity to go through spring practice than it is coming in July or August or whatever it might be. Next on Tider Insider TV, if you're worried about coaching changes at Alabama, Nick Saban has a message for you.
You know what? I think you all need to get a life when it comes to all this stuff that people put on the internet.
Coming up, Coach Saban says he's tired of internet rumors about his staff and that it's irresponsible to report on them. We'll have that story. Tider Insider TV will also get to your phone calls and emails. Again, the telephone number 205-348-9882. Tider Insider TV will continue right after this. Tider Insider TV continues on this Tuesday, January 18th, 2011, presented by Buffalo Rock. Well, recent published reports have indicated that Alabama assistant coach Sal Sunseri had been talking with John Fox, the new Denver Broncos head coach, about a position with the Broncos. Of course, Sunseri worked for Fox in Carolina. But on Saturday, Coach Saban was asking about those reports, and let's just say it didn't go over too well.
You know what? I think you all need to get a life when it comes to all this stuff that people put on the internet. Sal Sunseri would come to me. I know John Fox very well. Sal has worked for John Fox. Sal would come to me and tell me if he had been contacted, as all of our coaches have done, and that has not occurred. Now, that's not to say it might not occur, but it has not occurred to this point. It's really not fair to our coaches, and it's not fair to our recruiting, that every time somebody puts something on the internet, you all write it and put an article in the paper like it really is true. I'm sorry you asked that too, because I was in a really good mood.
Rodney and I, you and I have talked a lot about this, whether Coach Saban likes it or not. It's the reality of the times we live in. The internet has changed everything. Wasn't that long ago that when an assistant coach made a move, it really wasn't that big a deal. Once it was announced, people reported on it. But now everybody's trying to get the scoop every time on every situation. So anytime there's any rumor about a coach talking to another program or an NFL team, it's going to get reported on.
Yeah, and especially, again, the scrutiny here at Alabama. As you know, everything is magnified. Definitely, and I don't even know where that report originated, to be honest.
But Coach Saban made it clear, if a coach is seriously considering leaving Alabama or talking with someone else, he'll come to him and tell him, so it doesn't look like anything's happening with Sal Sunseri. Joe Penry, though, loves Tuscaloosa, loves the University of Alabama. His retiring has to do with one thing. He wants to spend more time with his wife. They just bought a farm here in the Tuscaloosa area. He is going to stay on as an advisor to Mal Moore. What a great coach. What a great gentleman. And I guarantee you his influence will still be felt at the University of Alabama, but he did a terrific job in 4 years coaching the offense.
Yeah, I thought he had a lot of influence, Gary, on the offense, on recruiting. You know, when you look at some of the guys that they were recruiting, I think he was involved heavily in the evaluation process, and I think Nick Saban leaned on him with his experience quite a bit. So, again, he will be missed in many ways, but you know, comes a time when everybody has to step aside, and we knew that was coming with Joe Pendry sooner or later.
And it was a smooth transition. His replacement already announced, Jeff Statland from the University of Miami in Florida, also coached at Michigan State, also coached in the NFL. This is a guy that when Randy Shannon was let go, Statland was named the interim coach of Miami for the bowl game, so he was held in high esteem down there and has some good credentials.
Yeah, and you know, Gary, I've had an opportunity to speak with some coaches that are in college, not at Alabama, at different schools, and some that have been coached with Jeff Statland. They said he is a tremendous hire for Alabama. Not only is he a great coach, he is a tremendous recruiter, and we know the emphasis that Nick Saban puts on that. So I think, you know, again, not only is this a big pickup for Alabama in terms of, you know, what he can do as an offensive line coach, but his recruiting ability is very good. And, you know, I talked to Brandon Shell's mother, and I asked her, you know, what was your impressions of Jeff Statland? She was extremely impressed. So, you know, again, I think that it's a outstanding hire for Nick Saban.
Let's go to the phones. First up tonight is Joseph in Tuscaloosa. Joseph, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing today, Gary and Rodney? How y'all doing today?
Doing well.
Okay, roll tide. But hey, say, now from our seat, okay, the way things are put out, the Texans are catching the Blues with the decommitments. But now, is there a chance that Alabama could get the #1 recruiting class through the year, the way things are going in the recruit?
Oh, absolutely, Joseph. If Alabama snags Jadeveon Clowney, Isaiah Crowell, those two right there would probably give them, you know, the top spot. But there's a possibility. It'll come down to what happens in the last couple of weeks. But Alabama, I think, will have a consensus top 5 class and a shot at that #1 class.
Yeah, and I think maybe if they get Cyrus Quandro, which I think they will, Malcolm Mitchell, I think they will, or there's certainly a good chance with Malcolm Mitchell. Then you mentioned if they get Jadeveon Clowney with those other two, I think there's no question about it. And then you still have Nick Brazel in the mix and a couple of others. But yeah, they're very close. You know, again, those things are really subjective. They could get it in one service and then another service be in the top 5 or 6 or whatever, but they'll certainly have a top year.
Real quickly, anything happening with Brent Callaway, or you expect him to stay?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, and I think there is a chance. It just depends on what Alabama wants to do. You know, how are they going to pursue Brent Callaway down the stretch? And I think that it would not be a surprise, let me just put it that way, if Brent Callaway ended up at Alabama.
All right, we got to take a timeout. We'll try to get some more phone calls in right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. As always, Rodney and I are outfitted from the locker room located on the University Strip in Tuscaloosa, home of the original elephant wear. I've got an elephant wear shirt on. You've got a beautiful elephant wear tie on. I tell you, the elephant wear has taken Tuscaloosa and the state of Alabama by storm. So if you don't live in West Alabama, but you want to check out the original elephant wear inventory, just check them out on the web. Or if you're in the area, stop by Monday through Saturday. Alex and Rush and the folks will take care of you. 46 years and counting. It's a Tuscaloosa tradition, the locker room on the University Strip. Let's go back to the telephone. CB has been waiting patiently in Tuscaloosa. CB, what's going on, my friend?
Not much, man. Rodney, on the shortcut, how many players we got left? How much room we got left, brother? And how many we trying to get right on the end?
Well, let me put it to you this way, CB. As many great players out there that want to come, Nick Saban to take them. I mean, again, I think there's some flexibility in the numbers that Alabama has right now. I'm not sure that everybody's committed will necessarily end up on the signing day list. We've already seen one of those, Shannon Brown, who's already in junior college. And so, again, I mean, if you've got if you're full and Isaiah Crowell calls or Jadeveon Clowney calls and says, I'm committing to you, you're not turning him down. I assure you that. Is that the best way to put it?
Yeah, it's great. Good stuff. All right, let's go to Fayette and talk with Gary. Gary, welcome in.
Yes, I'd like to know about Jernigan from Florida.
Well, again, I've mentioned this before, and I hate to say it again in a way, but I think Bo Davis and his departure hurt a little bit, even though not necessarily that Bo was the primary recruiter, but being the defensive line coach. Jernigan has mentioned that as a factor in his decision. And, Alabama's still in the mix. He was supposed to take a visit this month, and he may still do that. I have not received confirmation one way or the other, so we'll just see kind of what happens. But I really think he's going to be a long shot for Alabama at this point.
All right, let's get one more call in. RW in Carrollton. RW, welcome in.
Yeah, roll tide. I was thinking with Julio leaving and being the physical receiver that he was, where is Michael Bowman on the team? They're kind of similar in size and strength. And so
yeah, RW, they're similar in size and strength, not similar in speed. I mean, Bowman's a little bit slower, and he's got some work to do. If he wants to crack that wide receiver rotation, he's going to have to show these coaches that he's got what it takes,
well,
and he'll have an opportunity in the spring.
Yeah. And he's been working at tight end. So, that's where he's got an opportunity possibly. And, again, he could work some at wide receiver as well, as Gary mentioned. But, they were hoping that maybe he'll get bigger and maybe have an opportunity there because he is a talented guy. And again, I think if Michael Bowman does everything he's supposed to do, he could have that opportunity.
Yeah, it is a great opportunity. Maybe a little slow at receiver could wind up being exceptionally quick and athletic for a tight end, so that might work out well. Thanks for the phone calls. When we come back, the Alabama men's basketball team hosts one of the best teams in the country tonight. We'll look ahead to the game with the Big Blue of Kentucky when Tider Insider TV returns. Well, finally tonight, a big basketball game at Coleman Coliseum. It really should be rocking. The Tide host Kentucky. Alabama 9-0 at home, Rodney, but this Kentucky team, you know, last year they had Cousins, Bledsoe, and John Wall. All three of those guys left after 1 year, #1 draft picks. What did Calipari do? He goes out and gets another incredible freshman class. Guys like Brandon Knight and Terrence Jones, they're 14-3, haven't missed a beat, and it's like Alabama in football. Yep. Kentucky is the draw, and it is the measuring stick, and Alabama will find out tonight what kind of basketball team it's got.
Yeah, Calipari and Saban, best two recruiters, maybe respectively in their sports, so that's interesting.
All right, going to be a good one tonight. Going to be rocking. ESPN will have it. We'll have a delayed telecast of the game for you tomorrow night. Myself and former Crimson Tide player Blake Thrasher will be on the call at 7 p.m. tomorrow night at WVUA. Of course, John Huddleston will be in for me tonight at 10. He'll have the highlights for you on the news tonight. And don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, there's only one place to go for the replay, WVUATV.com. John will have it up later on this evening. You can watch it anytime you want. So for Rodney Orr and our entire TITV crew, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching Tider Insider TV. We'll see you again next Tuesday night as the countdown to signing day gets even closer. Have a good evening, everybody.